Hello everyone, this is Matteo Atwi with Boxy Construction, and today we are going to release a quick tutorial on how to use AGA CAD in Revit to detail a building. For today's example, we're going to use a small shed kit because it has almost everything that you'd see in a building, minus windows. It has a roof, a floor system, and allows us to really dive in and understand what we're doing. So let's begin. So this is our shed kit. You can see very simple sloped roof, floor system underneath it, 2 doors, no windows, so we don't see how to frame windows, but the doors contain most of the complexity that a window would. So let's begin first by going to our 3D view. So we have just our generic 3D view here. And the first thing we want to do is check out our walls. So let's go back to level 1 and see what we have here. And we want to look at the actual structure, so we hit edit type over here, then we'll look at the actual structure and see what we have. So we have assuming 5/8 drywall on 3 5/8 inch metal studs, and then another layer of 5/8. And these are just kind of generic placeholders, so they can be replaced with whatever is actually in the model later. But we want to make sure that that internal structure is the correct size. So now let's go back to over here, and let's go to our tools for BIM is where you download the AGA CAD software, and tools for Revit metal framing is where we actually look at how to do the different systems. So we'll pop the walls out. You can just drag that out so that we can actually see it here. And go ahead and make sure you load your families. Just hit OK. The thing you have to learn about AGA CAD and Revit especially is that it takes a long time to load things. Maybe it's my computer. Okay, now once those families are loaded, you can go to your project browser and pop open families, and then in structural framing you should see all these new families of different studs and joists and track and things like that. So let's go ahead, and we need to link our walls. So in this building we have primarily the interior 4 7/8 inch partition. So we want to select what kind. I'm actually going to hit cancel here and go ahead and configure the framing, and we're going to create a new type, but we're going to base it off of the load framing. So let's save as C+U simple simple studs. We'll hit OK. Now we go to our C+U simple studs. So he keeps on giving me this error, so I'm just going to go ahead and replace these 6-inch 2.5 inch flange studs with something else. Stud joist. Let's see what we have here. Stud joist. So I went and found the stud joist families, and I'm just going to replace that 54 mil stud with a 1 5/8 flange stud. Hit OK. All right, now let's look at our common settings. So we want to bump this up to this main type of plates. We want to bump this down to this. Okay. And note, you actually don't have to change these sizes for every single wall. Like if you do a 6-inch wall versus a 3 5/8 inch stud wall, the software will already automatically change that for you. I'm just going to configure everything and make sure that it's set how I like it already. Okay, so I saved that configuration. Now I actually want to go add a few things that are not available in here. So our stud is fine, but we'd like to work with a different kind of track. See, right now it's the 150 track. We actually like to work with a 2-inch track. So I'm gonna just open up this family, and we're going to duplicate it and rename it as a 200 track. Okay, and so this BF here, that needs to change to 2 inches now. And as for the structural material, you can actually go ahead and assign that as the metal stud layer. So you would search for metal stud layer in your material browser. Like that. Okay, hit OK. And now that we've created that new kind of stud, or sorry, that new kind of track, well, let's see if that worked. Yeah, so we have a track here that's now a 200 type track. So let's go. And I intentionally made it a 33 mil track because what you're going to see is that you can actually use a thinner mill on your track than your studs. We may change it for uniformity's sake, but for now we'll keep it like this. Okay, so now you kind of just have to dive in and well, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. So now we link the walls. Now that we've created that new type, we can link the walls. So let's go in here and select C+U simple studs, hit OK. Let's go to level 1, and we're just going to frame one wall because we don't know if all the settings are right yet. So like I was saying, AGA CAD takes some time to process things and load, so that's what we're going to see here. Okay. So now let's hit VG on your keyboard and go to walls, override transparency, hit OK. Let's go ahead and do that for floors as well. Hit OK, and for the roof as well. And this is a technique I see them use a lot so that you can actually see the studs and the track. So it looks like for some reason AGA CAD is putting a 10-inch joist in the middle of our wall. And so you can probably tell that's something we don't want. But we are getting the studs that we want. That's adding some strapping. But for this build, We don't need strapping, like most likely because it's so small and because we'll have plywood on there. So let's go back to frame and configuration. All right. Now let's go to blocking and noggin. And let's see if you can just disable this one, disable this one as well. Okay, let's hit save. And let's try to regenerate that wall again. Now, sometimes what you have to do is you have to delete the frame first to regenerate it. It just depends. So let's, there's actually a setting for this. So if you go into frame wall, framing configuration, that's the thing that I kind of love and maybe dislike a little bit about AGA CAD is that there's so many settings. I mean, you can just spend days going over settings. Okay. Already framed, delete and reframe, update frame. All right. So it looks like we might already have that setting turned on, which would delete a frame every time you reframe it. But I don't know if that worked, so let's just go ahead and delete it. So I hit that delete button, and then I'm going to frame that wall again. So I got rid of my blocking, but now I'm still having this issue here, and I think I know why. So let's go back to framing configuration. So now stud holes, let's go look. Oh, look, stud holes, it's telling me it's putting a 10-inch joist in our stud holes. That seems to be a little bit silly. So let's, we'll uncheck that and we'll just uncheck everything. We'll save that and we will, let's try and see if frame wall will update this for us. All right, that looks like what we want. So you can see here we've got our studs. Let's see, if you select it, you can usually see what kind it is. So yes, it's a 3 5/8, 18 gauge, 1 5/8 flange. We've got, it looks like we've got a little cripple stud. And the cool thing about AGA CAD is that it also tells you what everything is. So like it's telling me this is a king stud. Like it'll tell me this is a cripple, top cripple, king stud. And so, you know, maybe not for this door, but we'll look at the other side and that other door. Maybe for that door, we want to have a thicker gauge king stud just to make sure that it can bear the weight. Also, you know, we want to make sure we have the right headers in here so that it can bear the weight of the wall above the header. Let's look at our track. We've got our 33 mil tracks. We might change that later. Yep, 33 mil. So let's go ahead and just frame out the other two walls. And so we can go to our level 1 and you can just select a few walls. Oops. You can select a few walls like this. And you can hit frame wall and see it'll generate the framing on all 3 walls simultaneously. Or really one at a time, but it'll do all 3 of them in the same batch. So this is helpful so you don't have to go to every single wall individually and frame it. Okay. Another thing I like to do is go to that level 1 and duplicate it. Duplicate. And again, go to walls and just override the transparency. Okay, and then also go turn this to fine. There we go. So now you can actually see the studs where they've been laid out. And you can see we have our nice, I believe it's called a California corner here, where you've got some material here if you wanted to hang drywall on the inside, but you also have a connection and a corner piece so that if you have OSB or plywood on the outside, it shouldn't be a problem to hang it there. And then, you can manually detail things. So we can actually go change this, bump up the gauge on it because it is a king stud and we might want it to be a little bit stronger. And it's just very simple. You can just click on it and bump that up. Now, one thing I'm curious is what kind of header was selected for the other side. So you can see in our 3D model that we're kind of getting something pretty nice here. So depending on the door used, this header's not going to work for such a long span, and probably not even for the shorter span over there. So we want to go modify that. So we'll go to framing configuration, and we will go to opening framing. We want to go to door framing. So it's saying up to 10 foot. It's using a non-bearing framing, which is just a piece of track usually. Also, it has a structural wall configuration. So I need to see, I think we can actually configure what's considered a structural wall and non-structural wall. And I know the Revit model I was using shows these as a non-structural wall. So let's go edit this type. Let's just go ahead and rename it exterior wall. Okay, and then let's hit OK. And we can hit structural, and we can do that for all of them. Right, like that, and then we can just hit frame wall again, or sorry, let's go select everything, and let's see if that works. So it's giving me an error. Instead of running this on everything, let's just go ahead and try to rerun it on our test door side right over here. Okay. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, so for some reason, for the cripple studs, it wants to use this this different profile, thicker gauge material. It is using the correct. We want what's called a box beam here, so it is correctly doing that. And I'll show you. Let me show you a section view of that box beam, just so you can get an idea of what we're looking at there. And there's our box beam. You can see it's usually two 6-inch studs with a track facing up and a track underneath. In this case, they've kind of botched it and put the track in the wrong spot. So we do have to go fix that. So we'll go back to framing configuration. And now we can go to here and edit configurations. So we're just going to replace these with the stud joist that we have in our configurator. So we want a 362. I think a 162 is going to be fine for everything here. I think some of these configurations are left over from another project we were working on where the engineer was speccing 2-inch flanges. So just making that change. Okay. There we go. So there's the king stud, 54. There's our box beam. And so the issue we're having is that bottom track is too low. So let's see. Well, first of all, yeah, that's fine. Let's see if we can so I think this will help. Let's just do 0 again and 0 again here. And let's align these with the previous start. Okay, let's try that. And let's go ahead and reframe that wall. And in reality, you probably want to bump it up a little bit, but look, now we have it slotted into our track. I mean, we want to bump it up a fraction because obviously it can't sit, flush in the track. It's going to be sitting on the top of the material, not overlapping with the material. But that does more or less solve our stud problem. And we're kind of doing what we want here. We've got we've got our 54 mil king studs. We've got our 43 mil cripple stud. Okay, so let's go ahead and update this wall over here. Then we'll start on the roof and the floor. Okay. Next up, let's tackle the floor next. So let's click on that floor like we did with the walls, and let's see what we have going on here. Yeah, so it's not. This needs to be set to metal stud layer so that it gets detected by AGA CAD. Let's go ahead and mark it as structural. And then let's link. Well, I forgot, so cancel. Let's pop this back into the browser. So I hit that little arrow on it. I'm gonna pop the, I'm gonna pop the floor plus M out. There we go. Floor plus M is very similar to the wall plus M. So we gotta load our families first. And a lot of them are shared, so I think some of them will already be loaded, but there may be some that aren't preloaded. Oops, we just did that. Now let's go ahead and link our floor. We'll see we may not have let's do the floor frame. Let's try that. And let's just let's frame our floor. See what happens. Okay, I think I linked the wrong floor. So let's try that one more time. We wanted to link our generic 6-inch floor. This is not a framing layer. This is a sheathing layer. So that's a layer kind that you can assign there. I'm not sure if that was the issue though. So let's see what happens. So it added one piece of track. Well, let's hit Control Z on that. Anyways, and let's go to level 1 and go ahead and sorry, let me edit it from this view. Double click my floor, and I'm going to change the span direction on the floor and hit check. That span direction tells the software which direction to have the studs run in. So, I mean the joists in this case. So it's put the track on the right side, but now it's acting kind of funky. So let's go check it out. we're using that floor metal frame. Okay, so it's trying to load a stud that we don't have right now. So let's replace it because we don't need to use that kind of stud. I believe we're using a 600 S162-43 in this one. And we can also switch our track. Although later I do want to change those to 2-inch track. Okay, let's try that one more time. And immediately you notice that our spacing on our walls and on our track is different. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about earlier as well. So let's see. Let's go back into that framing configuration. So this is 16 on center. So our walls must be, we'll double check our walls. Our walls must be 24-inch on center, something like that. Yeah, 2 foot on center. So let's change it to 16 and 16. And let's go ahead and select all our walls. I hit tab to select all the walls, and let's go over here and just update that framing. Classic AGA CAD, you are sitting and watching it load. And that's why a lot of people drag out their walls and calibrate everything, get everything right, and then they go into the model and they assign all the walls all at one time, and then they kind of go take a coffee break. Okay, that looks better. We have a lot more studs now. Now, one thing that a lot of designers, specifically engineers, will do is they align the studs over the joists, and so I think that's a good practice as well. So let me show you how to do that. It's also kind of not particularly simple. So let's go and let me find the setting first. Align, trim, and extend. So let's align elements. It's going to pop up this window here. Align studs with other elements. So let's, and then the instructions are in the bottom left hand corner. Select stud or any, oops, sorry guys. Select stud or any beam to align with its starting point. And then select frame by stud. So usually I mix this up, so let's see if we got it right. Oh, we got it right. So you select what you want to align with first, and then you select what you're aligning. There we go. And so now our design is nice and clean. We've got our studs lined up with our joists. So all the bearing is going straight down through the floor. So now let's see if we can tackle that ceiling. Okay. Now, roof framing has tended to be pretty tricky for me, so we'll see if I get it on the first try. See, there's no directionality like the floor systems. So let's go ahead and pop our floor system back into there. And sometimes I'll use a floor system to do a ceiling just because it's a little bit easier. I think that's what they recommend at AGA CAD as well, but check with them first. I can't drag it out, so I guess we'll just use it how it is. Let's go ahead and usually on huge roofs you have to do this whole process of breaking it apart into panels and then doing this and that. So I will say it gets a lot more complex than the roof, than the walls and the floor. But I believe for this one we should be able to just go in here and do what we've been doing. Assign this to metal stud layer. Make it 6 inches. And we'll go ahead and insert, oops, just need one of those. We'll go ahead and insert finish on top. It doesn't matter so much, I just want a placeholder. We'll make it a 1/2 inch. Oops, 1/2 inch. There we go. Okay, now let's get to our linking it. I need to rename this as well because it's not 12 inches anymore. We'll just call it 6.5. And then over here, we'll want to load families. Then we'll link the wall, or link the roof. Now I'm not sure which one. I'm just gonna say roof rafter frame. And we can go check it out and see what I just did. Yep, so this is from another project, but we can just replace those in this project. This looks pretty good to me. Let's give it a shot. We'll see. Yeah, so it's trying to use that sorry guys, it's trying to use that standard profile, or that profile that I used on another project. So let's see if we can change that setting. Yeah, I don't think I necessarily changed it. Let's just try to get something to draw, and then we'll go fix it later. Yeah, I'm not sure why I put all of this in there, but we'll fix it later. But overall, looks like we kind of got what we wanted. We have see, this is why we do this too. Look, you can see that this door here is clearly not going to work, but the owner's going to use this just a 6 foot wide door. They're not going to use an overhead door necessarily. It did in fact use a 200 piece, and it also added these blocking joists. So there's a few things we want to change in here. We don't need them to be 2 inches wide, I believe. So let's go ahead and modify. And you can also see that our stud layout is off. It's not 16 on center. It looks like it's 24 on center as well. Rafter frame. Yeah, I'm gonna have it use a regular joist. It's trying to use a rafter joist. Let's just save this as shed roof. Go ahead and change this to 16. And the spacing to 16. And then we want to turn off this. We don't need it. And this, we don't need it. So now remember, we have to go reassign, relink those. Link. So let's reframe that. Let's see what we can do here. Okay. That's pretty close to what we want. And so I'm gonna go ahead and end this tutorial now. You can kind of get an idea of how to go about detailing a whole building like this. Of course, there's so many more settings and so many more things you could add, but this is the main start. So thank you for your time today.